our audience, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for viewing our show today. We have the great honor and we have the great pleasure be able to invite Dr. Yoshida Bhaskar in our speech and in our show today. And may whatever she shared with you, may it, whatever you receive it with every resonant tones in your heart. And if those that are ready to resonate with what she shared, may that would become an opening to direct and transform your life as you get to know that. Thank you, Dr. Yoshida. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me, Shanti. I feel very honored and blessed to be here.
I know this is the first time I have an interview with a doctor.
Oh, okay.
And not just a regular doctor. A doctor that is very passionate about the true directive to a wholesome life. And she's not a regular medical doctor, and I would say she's a doctor that are very focused in wholeness. I'm sure some audience would like to know a little bit about your background. What bring you here to Hawaii, and how did you get into medicines?
So I went to medical school in India, and it was my father's wish that at least one of us should be a doctor, and turns out 2 of us out of 3 became doctors. So it was like an additional bonus for him, you know. So my journey has been quite twisted and with lots of turns, but I got married. My husband lived in the US at that time, and so I came to join him in Colorado, and then he had a job change, so we lived in Kuwait for about 6 years. I lived 6 years, he lived there for 8 years. He was teaching at the medical school there. In the meantime, we had 2 children, and I then came back to this country to do my additional training in internal medicine in El Paso, Texas. And after that, we moved to Washington State, where I practiced as a hospitalist and consultative internist for a large, multi-specialty organization for about 16 years.
16 years.
Mm-hmm. And my philosophy about medicine changed, and there were some other factors that I decided it was time to try something new, try something different. In fact, I actually retired, and then we decided to move to Hawaii because that was one of our long-time dreams, and our kids were grown up, and we said this is the time to do it. So we moved here last April, and I got another job, and here we are.
Would you like to share with the audience about how did you come across that? Because in medical school nor in nursing school, they never taught about this.
That's right. So, like I said, I was my practice was just a regular hospitalist and clinic practice, and I did what all doctors are trained to do, which is see sick patients, give them advice and write for medications. And what I noticed over time is I would see the same patients keep coming back to the hospital. They would be sicker. They would usually be on 2 or 3 more medications. They would have side effects from these drugs. And there was a sense of, are we really helping people? We all went into medicine because we want to help people, not just to live longer, but to live better.
Right.
And I saw they were certainly living longer with all the advances we've made in, Western medicine. But I wasn't convinced that their quality of life had improved. And they sort of backed that up. They would say, I'm tired of taking all these medications. Gee, doc, don't you have a magic pill, And at that time I didn't. And I would be like, I'm sorry, this is what we have, the best we have. About 2.5 years ago, one of my friends mentioned a plant-based conference, and I had never even heard the term whole food plant-based. So I started looking into it, and the more I researched it, I was shocked at how much evidence there was, because I pride myself on being very evidence-based. That's my training. And so I had to do my research, my due diligence. I had to convince myself that there was true science behind this. And it was mind-blowing how much information there is out there. And so I decided to adopt it myself, because I, had a few minor health issues, and I was gaining some weight, and I wanted to see the results for myself, but also how doable it is if I'm going to be advising patients to do this. And I was blown away by the results. I had way more energy. I didn't have like brain fog. In the afternoons, late afternoons, I would be dragging usually. That kind of went away, and I lost some weight. I felt great, and I was like, wow, this really works. This is the magic pill. So me being me, what I did is I just delved into it. Everything I could lay my hands on, every documentary that was out there, went to 4 plant-based conferences. I did 30 hours of CME education to really learn about this way of eating. And the more I read and the more I saw, this is it. This is real. If you can do this, this is the way to go. So that's kind of where my interest started, and I've kept up with it, and I think it's the answer to a lot of problems.
I see. So when you first started on plant-based, what's most convinced you in your experience or in your research?
You mean in terms of its power, or?
In terms of your, let's say, certain study or certain authority or certain other doctors that are in the same field of practice?
Right. So I read the China study by Dr. Colin Campbell. That is sort of the landmark study, that there is out there. And then that was life-changing, and probably an easy and quick one was the documentary Forks Over Knives, because it really talks about the science behind it. They've actually taken some patients and kind of lead you through their journey and show you their results of, like what their cholesterol levels were, what their blood pressure was, what their weight was before they started on this journey, and then what happens as time goes on. And it has some great doctors on there, like Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Bernard. There's some really good doctors in the movement who are in the documentary. So it's a great, great place to start for, not just for lay people, and then I found out that our cardiothoracic surgeon, so the surgeon who, cracks open chests, does bypass surgery on patients, puts in heart valves on patients, had actually gone on a whole food plant-based diet 5 years prior after he read the China study, and he was convinced that the evidence was there. Very smart man. And he said, I've lost 30 pounds. I'm less grumpy in the operating room. The nurses like me now. And he said, I will never go back. And he insisted that his patients get close to plant-based food when they were in the hospital, which is another whole topic we can discuss, where, we have patients who just had cardiac bypass surgery or just had stents put in their heart. And I would walk in their room and I would look at their breakfast tray, and they had sausage, bacon, and eggs.
My gosh.
Right.
Eating toxic food.
Exactly. So it was like so unbelievable. It's almost like, this can't be real. We just opened up their clogged arteries, and we're actually helping them reclog it quickly. It was so, like, it didn't even make sense, So he was very motivating for me, and he said, you will run into a lot of resistance, not just among patients, but amongst your colleagues.
Wow.
And that, I think, was the biggest shock for me, because I thought I had, found the new magic pill, the next thing better than sliced bread. And when I started having these conversations with my colleagues, it was very interesting. You mean the surgeon, the cardiothoracic surgeon? His name was Dr. Quinton.
Quinton,
Yeah.
that was when you were in Washington.
In Washington, yep. And he's still practicing and he's still doing surgery. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
I'm sure you went to so many different conference in plant-based practice. So you probably come across some very high authority doctor that are in the movement too. Right?
Oh, absolutely. I've had the honor and pleasure of meeting Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Michael Greger, Dr. Neil Bernard, like Dr. Esselstyn,
Wow.
Dr. Clapper.
Wow.
I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I think what was really empowering and fun to see were how passionate they were about this. Clearly, they didn't need any convincing. They had all the evidence and data in front of them. B, none of them were trying to sell you supplements, come and buy this product from mine. Or, it was all very much evidence-based, very much in the spirit of service to patients, right?
Yes.
And the atmosphere at these conferences was unlike any other conferences I had been to. I would go to these regular conferences and it's like the doctors would be like dragging themselves in, and they have, served croissants and scrambled eggs and bacon, right, with Coke or Pepsi. And there was delicious food. There was absolutely delicious food, and everybody was bright and cheery-eyed, and you would think you were in a conference for models. I am not kidding you. There was this one conference in California, I think it was my first one, where it sold out. There were about 1,000 people in that room. 1,000 people. Yep. And
mostly they were doctors.
Mostly doctors, but
Healthcare
also
professionals.
nutritionists, health coaches, all kinds of healthcare professionals who shared the same passion.
Wow.
And honestly, the rates of obesity in America is about 60 to 70% now. In that room, I would say it was less than 20%. You could see that they were practicing what they were preaching, and you could see the effects of this way of eating. And it was, you don't need anything more than that, right? Like, you see the evidence right in front of you of happy, cheerful people who looked slim, energetic, and, beautiful hair, lovely skin. It was like utopia. Yeah, lots of energy and excitement in the room, and talking and networking, and it was just constant, nonstop,
Wow.
It was fantastic, yeah.
Were you aware of this type of plant-based practice has conference that were including international healthcare professionals?
Absolutely. There were people from multiple countries that were at these conferences, from Australia, New Zealand, Mexico. I mean, pretty much every country in the world. There were one or two or more representatives. Japan, China, Thailand. It's definitely an international movement. Yeah.
So it is a global trend.
Absolutely.
And they are healthcare professionals.
That's right.
That's a good news. Mm-hmm. I think humanity has a good hope.
We hope so. We hope so.
Hopefully, we'll take back our power to be responsible, what we responsible to put in our body.
Absolutely.
Rather than giving the power to the pharmaceutical company of the external source.
Absolutely. I
Great.
agree. Yeah.
Now, even when you're talking about the conventions, I feel already pumped up.
I'm glad.
I understand you also recently have has a lesson teaching about cooking healthy bacon.
Yes, we did a cooking class. Yes. So my husband actually is a better cook than I am. And I actually learned most of my cooking from him. I didn't learn it from my mom anyway. And so we decided, and our friends always ask us, we love Indian cooking. It's so delicious, but it seems so complicated. It's too intimidating. Cook for us. And we were like, we'll teach you how to cook, right? Then you can cook at home. And so the idea came about that we could just do a cooking class in one of the local shops here, the gourmet shop. They have a beautiful, demonstration kitchen set up. And I just walked in there and she said, I would love that. People are always asking for especially vegetarian or vegan type of cooking. There's a lot of interest. And so we did, and it was a rip-roaring success.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I wish I was there.
I was shocked. But yeah, it was great. They were very gracious. There were 12 people, so the class sold out, I think, within 3 or 4 days
Wow.
of her advertising it. There was a wait list, and I think there were at least 1 or 2 people on the wait list.
Wow.
And yeah, so we did about, I think, 6 dishes, and people had lots of questions about the different spices, and in Indian cooking we use a lot of spices that's proven to be scientifically now very healthy. Turmeric obviously being the most common, garlic is another one. In any event, so we are planning to do a few more as the year goes on.
You said 6 dishes, almost 6 dishes for one whole meal for our family.
Yes.
What did you teach that day for the 6 dishes?
Well, we did like little vegetable patties, and then we did a tomato barley soup, and we did rice. Rice is sort of mandatory in Indian cooking.
Brown rice or?
It was actually, we went ahead and did white rice. I do think brown rice is healthier for sure, but for the purpose of the class, we decided to stick with white rice. And then we did a dish which had lentils in it, which is called sambar in South India, but it's called dal in North India, and it had some vegetables in it. And then we did a couple of vegetable side dishes, a carrot and a green beans, and then we did a dessert. I think that covered them all. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
How does it feel like to teach people about cooking vegetarian, plant-based food, being a doctor, compared with your routine as being a doctor? How does it?
Oh my goodness, like night and day. I mean, it was just so, because it was right away, and we didn't emphasize that it was vegetarian or vegan, or it was just food. And I don't know, not one person, I'm sure, there missed not having meat on their plate. Like it wasn't even on their radar. Like, if you make food really delicious, because one of the things I hear a lot when I try to have this conversation is, but I'm going to miss my meat or my cheese or my, whatever. And it's not so much about asking you to give up what you love. It's more about thinking about how you substitute for something that's healthier, and there's so many different tricks and tips and stuff like that you can do to make that happen and make it delicious, and you're not going to feel like you're doing a special diet. What I really love about this, because I love food, is you don't have to worry about portion control, right? You can eat as much as you want as long as you're eating the right foods and, the right buckets of food. And you just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're not hungry, But it was definitely different from sitting in a clinic and just writing, prescription after prescription for a statin or a blood pressure medicine or a diabetes medicine. It was very gratifying.
It certainly is very alive and interacting. Emergence, if we have a clinic, just teaching patients how to eat rather than throwing them medicine and prescriptions.
Yes.
Would that be that's a more interesting doctor visit than any other patient would like to have?